You close the door, the world outside fades, and for the first time all day, you can breathe. No performance, no small talk, no pretending to be more social than you actually are. Just silence, and it feels like coming home to yourself. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once said that a person's need for sociability is inversely proportional to their inner richness. In other words, the deeper your inner world, the less you need the noise of others. But if that's true, why do you still feel guilty for preferring your own company? Maybe it's because society has told you your whole life that something is wrong with you, that you're antisocial, lonely, missing out. But what if the opposite is true? What if, as the poet Rilke wrote, your solitude isn't a void, it's a sanctuary, a place where you don't have to explain yourself, where you don't have to adjust your personality to fit the room, where you can finally just be. There is a real psychology behind why some people genuinely love being alone, and it has nothing to do with being broken. Some people feel most alive in the familiar silence of their own homes. They don't crave the noise of crowded places or the pressure of constant socializing. Instead, they find peace in solitude, in the gentle rhythm of their own company. To others, they might seem withdrawn, maybe even lonely, but they're not missing out on life. They're protecting their peace. These individuals aren't running from connection, they're running toward clarity. There is a real psychology behind why some people genuinely love being alone. Research suggests that those who prefer solitude often possess what psychologists call high internal complexity. Their inner worlds are rich, layered, alive. While others seek energy outward, these people generate it inward. Inside their minds, there is depth, freedom, and profound meaning. This internal complexity isn't just a personality quirk, it's a psychological architecture. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who spent decades studying the human psyche, called this process individuation, the journey of becoming who you truly are, not who society expects you to be. He believed that people who turn inward aren't avoiding life. They're discovering it. They're peeling back the layers of social conditioning, the masks they've worn for years, and finally meeting themselves. Jung also spoke of the persona, the mask we wear in public to fit in, to be accepted, to survive. And he warned that carrying this mask is one of the most exhausting things a human being can do. You're not tired of people. You're tired of pretending to be someone you're not. You're tired of performing. You're tired of adjusting your energy to match the room. You're tired of code switching your personality just to be liked. And when you're alone, you can finally drop the mask. You can finally rest. You can finally be honest. Their hearts don't beat faster in crowded rooms. They beat steadier in silence. Psychologists have observed that highly introspective individuals process experiences differently. Where some people think out loud, these people think inward. Where some recharge through conversation, these people recharge through stillness. It's not avoidance, it's preference. And preference, when it's genuine, is a form of wisdom. There's something profound happening in their minds that most people never see. While others seek stimulation externally, through noise, through crowds, through constant activity, these individuals have learned to generate their own sense of aliveness from within. Their inner world is not empty. It's full of thoughts that need time to unfold, full of emotions that need space to be felt, full of ideas that need silence to take shape. Schopenhauer understood this deeply. He didn't say that solitary people are smarter than others. He said they are richer in inner life, richer in sensitivity, richer in the ability to feel, think, and create without needing constant external validation. He believed that people who love solitude aren't missing something. They're protecting something. They're protecting the quiet space where their soul can breathe. And Rilke, the poet who spent much of his life alone, wrote, "What is necessary is only this: solitude, great inner solitude. Going into oneself and not meeting anyone for hours, that is what one must arrive at. He wasn't talking about isolation. He wasn't talking about loneliness. He was talking about the courage to sit with yourself, to face your own thoughts, to listen to your own voice without the noise of the world drowning it out. But here's the interesting part. This wasn't always understood. For years, psychology pathologized solitude. If you preferred being alone, something must be wrong. You were antisocial, depressed, broken. The assumption was simple. Humans are social creatures. So anyone who steps away from the crowd must be suffering. Therapists would ask, why do you isolate yourself? As if the act of being alone was inherently a problem to solve. Self-help books would promise to cure your loneliness by teaching you how to be more outgoing, more social, more like everyone else. The message was clear. If you're alone, you're doing life wrong. But that assumption was incomplete. It ignored a fundamental truth. Not everyone experiences solitude the same way. For some, it's painful. For others, it's peace. For years, I believed something was fundamentally wrong with me. I'd observe people lighting up at social gatherings, moving effortlessly through conversations, and I'd question why I felt so completely drained afterward. Why every interaction felt like I was performing a role. Why I'd return home not energized, but depleted. I assumed I was missing some essential piece, some innate social capacity that everyone else seemed to possess naturally. I'd push myself to accept invitations, to show up, to be present in spaces filled with people, and I would engage. I would smile. I would contribute. But internally, I was measuring time until I could leave, until I could return to the one environment where performance wasn't required. Home. Then I shifted my focus, not toward what I was lacking, but toward what I actually possessed. In solitude, I wasn't experiencing emptiness. I was experiencing fullness. Fullness of thought, reflection, internal dialogue. I could immerse myself in a book for hours and feel more connected to existence than I ever did in crowded spaces. I could walk in silence and return with more clarity than any conversation had ever provided. I could spend entire evenings with my own mind and feel more deeply understood than I ever felt surrounded by people attempting to know me. What I once saw as emptiness, I now recognize as sacred space. That realization changed everything. My need for solitude wasn't a character flaw. It was my design. It was how I was built to process the world, how I restored myself, reflected, and made sense of my own existence. People who love being alone aren't missing something. They're protecting something. They're protecting their peace, their energy, their clarity. They're protecting the quiet space where they can hear themselves think, feel, and exist without performance, without pretending, without adjusting their personality to fit the expectations of others. Solitude, for them, isn't loneliness. It's freedom. It's the place where they don't have to explain themselves, justify their choices, or pretend to be someone they're not. It's the place where they can finally breathe. And that kind of freedom, that's not a deficit. That's a way of living, a way of being, a way of honoring who you actually are instead of who the world thinks you should be. Let's go deeper into the psychology. One of the most consistent traits among people who prefer solitude is heightened introspection. They don't just experience life, they reflect on it. They analyze their emotions, question their reactions, and search for meaning in everyday moments. This isn't overthinking, it's depth. When something happens to them, they don't just move on, they sit with it. They turn it over in their minds. They ask themselves, why did I feel that way? What does this mean about me? What can I learn from this? Their inner dialogue is rich, complex, constantly searching for understanding. Research suggests that highly introspective people often have richer internal narratives. Their minds are active, creative, constantly making connections. They see patterns, They notice details. They think in layers. They don't need external stimulation because their internal world is already stimulating enough. But here's what society says. You're missing out. You should get out more. You should socialize. You should have more friends. You should be more like everyone else. And maybe you've heard that. Maybe you've even believed it. Maybe you've looked at your life and thought, maybe they're right. Maybe I am missing something. But consider this. Life's greatest thinkers, writers, and artists were often people who loved being alone. Virginia Woolf wrote about the necessity of solitude for creativity. She believed that without time alone, without space to think deeply, true art couldn't emerge. Carl Jung spoke of the importance of turning inward to understand the self. He believed that self-knowledge required solitude, silence, and the courage to face your own inner world. Nikola Tesla, Emily Dickinson, Isaac Newton. Many of history's most brilliant minds were people who preferred their own company. They weren't broken, they were focused. They understood that depth requires silence, that clarity requires space, that creation requires solitude. They weren't running from the world, they were building something within themselves that the world couldn't give them. So the question becomes, what are they really protecting themselves from? Let me offer 3 psychological truths. First, they're protecting their energy. Not everyone recharges the same way. Extroverts gain energy from social interaction. They feel alive in crowds. They thrive on conversation, connection, and external stimulation. But introverts and highly sensitive people lose energy in those same environments. Every conversation, every social obligation, every small talk exchange costs them something. It's not that they hate people, it's that people require energy. And when you're someone whose energy drains quickly in social settings, you learn to be strategic. You learn to protect your reserves. You learn to say no, not because you're antisocial, but because you know your limits. And when they're alone, they're not avoiding life. They're restoring themselves. They're returning to baseline. They're making sure they have enough energy to show up as themselves, not as a drained version pretending to be okay. Solitude, for them, is not escape. It's maintenance. It's self-care. It's survival. Second, they're protecting their trust. Many people who prefer solitude have been hurt by social dynamics. Maybe they were misunderstood. Maybe they were judged for being different. Maybe they opened up to someone and were met with dismissal, mockery, or betrayal. Maybe they tried to fit in and realized that fitting in required them to betray themselves. Over time, they learned that not everyone deserves access to their inner world. So they became selective, careful, intentional. They stopped giving their trust freely. They stopped performing for approval. They stopped pretending to be someone they weren't just to be liked. And that's not coldness. That's emotional intelligence. That's knowing that your inner world is precious, and not everyone has earned the right to enter it. Third, they're protecting their authenticity. In solitude, there's no performance, no code switching, no adjusting your personality to fit the room, no pretending to laugh at jokes you don't find funny, no nodding along to conversations that bore you, no forcing yourself to be more outgoing, more social, more normal than you actually are. You can just be, fully, completely, without judgment, without expectation, without the exhausting work of managing how others perceive you. And for people who feel like they've spent their whole lives pretending to be more social, more outgoing, more extroverted than they actually are, solitude is the only place where they can drop the mask. It's the only place where they can be honest, where they can rest, where they can exist without performance. Here's a secret they rarely say out loud. Sometimes, being alone feels more honest than being with people. If you are someone who feels this way, you're not broken. You're not missing out. You're not defective. You're living according to your own design, and that design is valid. It's real. It's yours. Let me shift for a moment and speak directly to you. If you're watching this, chances are you've felt it. that quiet pull towards solitude, that relief when plans get cancelled, that sense of peace when you're finally home, door closed, world outside, and you can just breathe. That feeling of coming back to yourself after being away from yourself for too long. And maybe you've also felt the guilt, the voice that says, you should be more social, you should have more friends, you should want to go out more, you should be more like everyone else. But what if nothing is wrong? What if the world simply needs more people like you? People who don't fill every silence with noise, people who think before they speak, people who value depth over quantity, meaning over performance, peace over popularity, people who understand that not every moment needs to be shared, documented, or validated by others. What if your preference for solitude isn't a problem to fix, but a strength to honor? For a long time, I attempted to become someone I fundamentally wasn't. I forced myself into environments that depleted me. I agreed when I wanted to decline. I pretended to enjoy experiences I didn't. I performed. I adjusted. I adapted. And I was deeply unhappy. Everything shifted when I granted myself permission to be alone, genuinely alone, without guilt, without shame, without the relentless pressure to justify my choices. That's when I began feeling like myself again. I stopped apologizing for departing gatherings early. I stopped forcing attendance at events that held no meaning for me. I stopped pretending that surface-level conversations satisfied me, when what I truly needed was either profound dialogue or complete silence. And gradually, I constructed a life that didn't exhaust me, a life that felt authentically mine. Loneliness isn't about being alone. Loneliness is about being disconnected from yourself. And sometimes, the most connected you'll ever feel is when you're by yourself, in your own space, living according to your own rhythm. When you're not performing, when you're not pretending, when you're just being. Solitude is a state of mind. And when you choose it intentionally, when you honor it instead of fighting it, it becomes a form of power. And now it's time to talk directly to you. Maybe you are one of these people. Maybe you've spent years wondering if something is wrong with you. Maybe you've felt the pressure to be more outgoing, more social, more like everyone else. Maybe you've looked at your life and thought, I should have more friends. I should go out more. I should want this. But here's the truth. It doesn't mean you never get lonely. Loving solitude and feeling lonely aren't opposites. They can coexist. You can love being alone and still crave connection. You can prefer your own company and still wish, sometimes, that someone understood you, that someone saw you, that someone knew what it was like to be you. That's not a contradiction. That's being human. The difference is this. Solitude is chosen. Loneliness is not. Solitude is rest. Loneliness is ache. Solitude is freedom. Loneliness is isolation. Solitude is intentional. Loneliness is imposed. And the people who love being alone understand this distinction deeply. They're not running from connection. They're just selective about it. They'd rather have 1 or 2 people who truly see them than 100 who don't. They'd rather have depth than breadth, quality than quantity, meaning than noise. And that selectivity, that's not coldness. That's self-respect. That's knowing your worth. That's refusing to settle for shallow connections just to avoid being alone. Because here's what they've learned. Solitude gives them strength. It gives them clarity. It gives them the space to process, reflect, and return to themselves. And in a world that constantly demands your attention, your energy, your presence, the ability to say no, I need to be alone, is an act of self-preservation. It's an act of wisdom. It's an act of love for yourself. Imagine this. You step to the window and watch life continue outside. People walking, cars passing, the world moving at its own pace. And you're here, inside, still, quiet, alone. And it doesn't feel empty. It feels full. Society glorifies busyness as if rest is failure. It glorifies socializing as if solitude is loneliness. It glorifies constant connection as if stillness is stagnation. It tells you that if you're not always doing, always moving, always surrounded by people, you're wasting your life. But rest is part of growth. Stillness is part of clarity, and solitude is part of self-discovery. The people who understand this don't need the world's approval. They've found something more valuable: self-companionship. The ability to be with themselves without distraction, without performance, without pretending. The ability to sit in silence and feel at peace. The ability to spend time alone and not feel lonely. And that's not loneliness, that's freedom. So, let me say this clearly. There's nothing broken about preferring your own presence. There's nothing wrong with choosing home over crowded spaces. There's nothing missing when you select peace over performance. You're not antisocial. You're selectively social. You're not lonely. You're intentionally alone. You're not avoiding life. You're living it according to your own terms. You're not running from connection. You're protecting your energy. You're not cold. You're careful. You're not broken. You're designed this way. You're constructing a life that doesn't deplete you. A life that doesn't demand pretense. A life where you can breathe, think, and exist without constant noise. A life where you don't have to justify your need for solitude. A life where you can honor your own rhythm without guilt. And one day, perhaps sooner than you expect, you will open your door again. Not because you're forced to, not because society says you should, but because you choose to, because you've spent enough time with yourself to know who you are. And when you do step back into the world, you'll do it with clarity, with intention, with peace. Until then, honor your solitude, protect your energy, trust your design, because the world doesn't need more people pretending to be extroverts. It needs more people like you, people who know the value of silence, people who understand that depth is found inward, not outward, people who've learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply be alone and be okay with it. This is Alone Together, a quiet corner of YouTube for people who choose solitude over half-hearted connections. If you're here, you're not broken. You're just built differently. And you're not alone in being alone. If you want more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. We're here every week, exploring the psychology of people who love being alone.